You're knee-deep in mud, the screams won't stop, and the man next to you just lost half his face. If this softly spoken descent into battlefield misery helps you drift off, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep whispering brutal history into your helmet, one doomed battle at a time. You wake up this morning with feet that feel like someone filled your boots with broken glass and regret. Your name is... well, it doesn't matter now, does it? You're just another face in a sea of mud-caked, underfed English infantry, trudging through the countryside toward what your commander cheerfully calls glorious battle, and what you're beginning to suspect is actually expensive suicide. The morning air smells like wet wool, boiled onions, and the collective breath of 300 men who haven't seen soap since the Feast of St. Michael. Your armour, and we use that term very loosely, consists of a padded jacket that's more hole than padding, a helmet that belonged to someone considerably larger than you, than a shield that looks like it was crafted by a blind carpenter having a particularly bad day. "Right then, lads," shouts Sergeant Blackwood, a man whose optimism is matched only by his complete inability to count past 10. "Just over that hill, and we'll show those French dogs what English steel can do." You glance at your sword. It's more rust than steel at this point, but you keep this observation to yourself. Around you, men are joking, complaining, and occasionally falling over their own feet. Young Thomas is singing something about glory and honour, bless his heart. By evening, Thomas will have learned that glory sounds remarkably like screaming, and honour tastes quite a bit like your own blood. The march continues. Your feet continue their protest. Someone ahead of you trips over a root and takes down 3 other men like dominoes. Classic medieval warfare at its finest. You step over them and keep walking, because stopping means thinking, and thinking means realizing just how spectacularly unprepared you are for what's coming. The countryside rolls past. Green fields, stone walls, the occasional confused sheep. It's almost peaceful, really. Almost makes you forget that you're walking toward a place where men will try very hard to introduce sharp metal objects to your vital organs. Almost. "How much further?" asks little William, who earned his nickname by being approximately the size of a small cathedral. "Not far now," replies Sergeant Blackwood, though you notice he's been saying this for the past 4 hours. "Just over that ridge. And we'll see the field." The field, as if it's some sort of picnic destination, as if you're all going to spread out blankets and share meat pies rather than, try to kill each other with farming implements that someone sharpened to a point. You crest the ridge and... there it is. A lovely valley spread out below, complete with morning mist, wild flowers, and approximately 2,000 French soldiers who look remarkably well fed and properly armed. They're arranged in neat formations, banners fluttering in the breeze, looking for all the world like they actually know what they're doing. "Blimey," mutters Big John, who has a gift for stating the obvious. "There's rather a lot of them, isn't there?" Rather a lot, indeed. You count the enemy formations while trying not to think about how your own formation looks more like a group of lost pilgrims than an army. The French have cavalry, proper cavalry, with horses that look like they've been eating something other than hope and grass clippings. They have archers with bows that aren't held together with prayer and twine. They have men in actual armour, not just thick shirts and wishful thinking. "Right then," says Sergeant Blackwood, apparently untroubled by the sight of organised death waiting below. "Form up, lads. Remember your training?" Your training. 3 weeks of being shown the pointy end of a sword and told not to run away. Masterful preparation, really. The morning sun climbs higher, burning off the mist and revealing the field in all its pastoral glory. Birds sing in the trees. Flowers bloom along the hedgerows. It's quite beautiful, actually, which makes the whole massive impending slaughter thing feel rather surreal. You take your position in the line, shield on your arm, sword in your hand, and try to remember everything Sergeant Blackwood taught you about not dying. Unfortunately, most of his lessons seem to centre around stick them before they stick you, and try not to trip over your own feet. Advanced tactical thinking, clearly. The French are moving now, their formations shifting like pieces on a chessboard played by people who actually understand chess. You watch their archers, hundreds of them, taking position on a low hill. They're knocking arrows, long, sharp arrows that look very much like they know exactly what they want to do when they grow up. "Steady, lads," calls out Sergeant Blackwood. "Remember, we're fighting for England, for our homes, for our families." You're fighting because you were told to, but you appreciate the sentiment. Around you, men are crossing themselves, muttering prayers and checking their weapons one last time. Thomas is still humming his glory song, though it sounds a bit more nervous now. The French horns blow, a deep, resonant sound that seems to roll across the valley like thunder. It's quite musical, really. Pity, it's the overture to your potential demise. And then you see them. The French archers drawing their bows. Hundreds of them, all at once, arrows nocked and aimed at your general vicinity. The morning sun catches the arrowheads, making them glitter like deadly stars. "Oh," you say quite calmly, "that's not good." The arrows rise, all of them, together, a great cloud of wooden shafts and steel points, arcing up into the sky like the world's most murderous flock of birds. They hang there for a moment, suspended against the blue sky, beautiful and terrible. You have just enough time to think, well, this is inconvenient, before the storm begins. The arrows fall like rain. Angry rain. Rain that wants to kill you personally. "That's my good arm," he says, quite reasonably, just before the second arrow takes him in the neck. You dive behind a supply cart, a sturdy thing loaded with turnips and what might charitably be called bread. The arrows thud into the wood around you, each impact sounding like a carpenter's hammer driven by pure malice. The air fills with the whistle of falling shafts and the considerably less musical sounds of men discovering that being shot hurts quite a lot. Thomas, sweet, optimistic Thomas, takes an arrow through his thigh and immediately begins a detailed critique of the French archery technique. "Bit unsporting, really," he says, trying to pull the shaft free. "Shouldn't they give us a chance to get closer first?" Another arrow punches through the cart just above your head, sending splinters of wood raining down like wooden snow. You press yourself flatter against the ground, which is becoming increasingly difficult, as the ground itself seems to be growing arrows. A man to your left, you think his name is Geoffrey, though it's hard to be certain with half his face painted red, sits down heavily and begins examining an arrow that sprouted from his chest like a very aggressive flower. "Ah," he says, poking at the fletching. "That's going to leave a mark." The arrow storm continues. Shafts fall like God's own hail, turning the morning into a whistling, thudding nightmare. Men run in circles, trying to escape the rain of death, but the arrows seem to follow them, eager and persistent. You watch a man attempt to use another man as a shield, which works about as well as you'd expect. You watch someone try to catch an arrow in mid-flight, which demonstrates either remarkable optimism or catastrophic misunderstanding of basic physics. The supply cart is beginning to look like a very large, very wooden hedgehog. Arrows stick out of it at every angle, creating a forest of shafts that would be artistic if they weren't trying to kill you. "Form up," shouts Sergeant Blackwood from somewhere in the chaos. "Hold the line." What line? The line is currently spread across approximately half the county, with individual pieces running in different directions while screaming about French archery. You spot a gap in the arrow storm, a brief moment when the sky above you is merely deadly rather than apocalyptic, and make a dash for better cover. Unfortunately, better cover turns out to be behind a man who's already been shot 3 times and is using the opportunity to write what appears to be a very lengthy letter to his mother. "Bit busy here," he says, not looking up from his writing. "Could you find somewhere else to cower?" An arrow punches through his hat, and he sighs deeply. "Right then, perhaps we can share." The French archers are reloading. You can see them across the field, working with the smooth efficiency of men who've done this before and rather enjoyed it. They're probably discussing the weather, or their families, or how satisfying it is to turn English infantry into human pincushions. You take stock of your situation. You're behind a dying man who's writing correspondence, in the middle of an arrow storm, armed with a sword that's mostly rust and a shield that's mostly hope. Your armour is probably providing roughly the same protection as a stern letter to the French, suggesting they stop shooting at you. And the morning is still young. The arrows fall again. Another great cloud of death descending from the sky like the world's most aggressive weather system. This time, you're ready. You roll to your left, behind a fallen horse that's apparently decided that discretion is the better part of valor and has taken a nap. The horse snorts and opens one eye. Bit noisy, innit, it seems to say, before closing its eye again. You realize you're having a conversation with a horse. This is either a sign of impending madness or a perfectly reasonable response to being shot at by several hundred French archers, probably both. The arrow storm passes, leaving behind a field decorated with shafts like the world's most violent garden. Men are scattered across the ground, in various states of punctured, some still moving, others having decided to try being dead for a while. You stand up, check yourself for new holes, and find that you're still remarkably arrow-free. This is either excellent luck or terrible luck, depending on whether you believe in saving the best for last. Sergeant Blackwood appears beside you, looking like he's been used as target practice by a very enthusiastic archer. He has 3 arrows sticking out of his shield and 1 through his hat, but he's still standing and still shouting. "Right then," he says, apparently untroubled by the fact that half his unit is currently auditioning for the role of human pincushion. "Time to close with the enemy. Remember, stick them before they stick you." Stick them before they stick you. Revolutionary tactical thinking from a man who's currently being used as an arrow storage facility. The French are moving again. You can see their infantry advancing, shields up, weapons ready, looking for all the world like they actually know what they're doing. Behind them, the archers are preparing for another volley. "Charge!" shouts Sergeant Blackwood, apparently unaware that a charge typically requires more than 12 men and a cart full of turnips. But you charge anyway, because standing still means becoming target practice again, and you've had quite enough of that for one morning. You run forward, over the arrow-studded ground, past the scattered remains of your formation, toward the advancing French line. The second arrow storm catches you halfway across the field. You're running now, not toward glory, not toward victory, but toward the simple mathematical certainty that moving target plus French archer equals slightly better odds than standing still and waiting to be turned into a human quiver. The second wave of arrows rises like a dark prayer to some very aggressive deity. You watch them climb, arc, and begin their descent with the kind of focused malice that suggests the French archers have been taking this personally. Geoffrey, remember Geoffrey, the man with the arrow in his chest, is still sitting where you left him, but now he's got 4 more arrows decorating his torso like the world's most morbid Christmas tree. He's still conscious, still talking, apparently operating under the theory that if he acknowledges each arrow individually, they'll be more polite about killing him. "That's the 5th one," he says, examining a fresh shaft that's appeared in his shoulder. "Bit excessive, really. One should have been quite sufficient." You dive behind a pile of something that might once have been a man, but is now more of a general concept of human-shaped debris. The arrows fall around you like deadly rain, each one striking the ground with a sound like an angry carpenter. A shaft punches through your shield, your lovely, trustworthy shield, that's been your companion through this whole ordeal, and stops just short of your nose. You go cross-knived, looking at the point which is sharp enough to shave with, and apparently very interested in making your acquaintance. "Rude," you mutter, snapping the shaft off. Your shield now looks like it was designed by someone who misunderstood the basic concept of protection. The man next to you, Big John, you think, though it's hard to tell with all the arrows, gets hit 5 times in quick succession, once in the leg, once in the arm, once in the chest, once in the other leg, and once in the foot. He looks down at himself with the expression of a man who's just realized he's become a human dartboard. "Like me," I repeat slowly, "I think I'm dead." "Are you sure?" you ask, because it seems like the polite thing to do. "Well," he says, considering, "I can't feel my legs, my arms, or my chest, but I can still feel my nose. That's probably a good sign." "Is it?" He looks hopeful. "Probably not." He nods sagely and falls over, still conscious but apparently willing to compromise on the whole standing thing. The arrows stop falling. The French archers are reloading again, because apparently they've got arrows to spare and Englishmen to perforate. You use this brief respite to assess your situation, which is approximately what you'd expect from someone who spent the morning being used as target practice. Your shield is more whole than shield. Your sword is still mostly rust, your armour is still mostly hope, but you're still breathing, which puts you ahead of a significant percentage of your unit. And then you hear it, the sound of boots on grass, voices calling in French, the distinctive noise of men who are done with archery and ready to try their hand at more personal forms of violence. The French infantry is advancing. They look professional. That's the word that comes to mind. Professional. Like they've done this before, enjoyed it, and are looking forward to doing it again. Their shields are actual shields, not broken doors. Their swords are actual swords, not rust held together by wishful thinking. Their armour is actual armour, not thick shirts and prayer. You hate them already. Sergeant Blackwood appears beside you, looking like he's been through a very enthusiastic sewing machine. He's got arrows sticking out of places you didn't know could fit arrows. But he's still standing, still shouting, still apparently under the impression that this is all going according to plan. "Right then, lads," he says, apparently unaware that lads now consists of you, Big John, who might be dead, Geoffrey, who's definitely dying, and Thomas, who's currently trying to remove an arrow from his thigh while humming what sounds like a hymn. "Form up," continues Sergeant Blackwood. "Meet them steel to steel." Steel to steel. You look at your sword, which is more like rust to steel, but you appreciate the sentiment. The French line approaches. You can see their faces now, determined, focused, completely lacking in the sort of existential doubt that's been plaguing you all morning. They know what they're doing. They've probably had proper training. They've probably eaten proper food. They've probably got proper weapons. You hate them even more. The lines meet with a sound like the world's largest cooking pot falling down the world's longest flight of stairs. Steel rings against steel, wood crashes against wood, and men begin the age-old dance of trying to put holes in each other with sharp objects. You find yourself face to face with a French soldier who looks remarkably well-fed and professional. He's got a proper sword, a proper shield, and a proper expression of someone who's about to do something extremely unprofessional to your vital organs. "Bonjour," he says politely, then tries to remove your head with a swing that whistles past your ear. You respond by trying to introduce your sword to his chest, but he's apparently not interested in making new friends. He blocks with his shield, his actual functional shield, and counters with a thrust that you avoid by falling over. This turns out to be an excellent tactical decision, because while you're on the ground you can stab upward at his legs. He's not expecting this, probably because it's not a particularly honourable way to fight, but honour is a luxury you can't afford when you're lying in the mud trying not to die. Your sword, your rusty, faithful sword, finds the gap between his leg armour and introduces itself to his thigh. He makes a sound like a kettle with personality problems and staggers backward. You scramble to your feet, which is harder than it sounds when you're wearing a helmet that's too big and carrying a shield that's too small. The French soldier is looking at his leg with the expression of someone who's just realised that bleeding is actually quite inconvenient. "Pardon-moi," he says, which you're fairly certain is French for "this is going to hurt." He swings at you again, but he's favouring his wounded leg and his swing goes wide. You duck under it and headbutt him in the chest, which is a technique that Sergeant Blackwood definitely didn't teach you, but which seems to work reasonably well. He staggers backward, trips over a body, and falls down hard. You're about to press your advantage when someone else's sword appears in your peripheral vision, aimed at your head with malicious intent. You roll to your left, behind the fallen French soldier, and find yourself face to face with another enemy combatant. This one is smaller, younger, and has the kind of desperate look that suggests he's as confused about being here as you are. "Salute," he says, which sounds friendly enough, before trying to stab you in the chest. You block with your shield, your holy perforated shield, and the blade punches through it like it's made of paper, which, given its current condition, it might be. The blade stops just short of your chest, trapped in the wood of your shield. You look at it. He looks at it. You both look at each other. Awkward, you say. He tugs on his sword, trying to free it from your shield. You tug on your shield, trying to free it from his sword. This creates a sort of medieval tug-of-war, with both of you pulling in different directions while trying not to fall over. The absurdity of the situation is not lost on you. Here you are, in the middle of a battle, playing tug-of-war with a French soldier over a sword that's stuck in your shield. This is probably not what the bards will sing about. The French soldier gives up on subtlety and punches you in the face. This is effective, if ungentlemanly. You respond by headbutting him back, which is equally effective and equally ungentlemanly. He lets go of his sword to clutch his nose. You let go of your shield to clutch your forehead. His sword is still stuck in your shield is still strapped to your arm, and you're both bleeding from the nose. This is ridiculous, you say. Oui, he agrees, still holding his nose. You look at each other for a moment. Two soldiers in the middle of a battle, both bleeding, both armed with weapons that are currently useless, both apparently wondering how they ended up in this situation. Then he pulls a dagger from his belt, and the moment of philosophical reflection ends. The dagger is small, sharp, and headed for your ribs with considerable enthusiasm. You grab his wrist, he grabs your wrist, and you both end up in a sort of deadly embrace, each trying to stab the other while preventing being stabbed yourself. This is more intimate than you'd prefer your combat to be. You can smell his breath, garlic and wine, suggesting he's had a better breakfast than you, and see the fear in his eyes, which probably mirrors the fear in your own. You're both grunting, straining, trying to overpower the other. His dagger is getting closer to your ribs. Your free hand is trying to find something vital to grab. But mostly, you're just grabbing cloth. Then you remember something Sergeant Blackwood taught you during those 3 weeks of training. When in doubt, use your teeth. You bite his ear. He screams, lets go of the dagger, and staggers backwards. You spit out a piece of ear and immediately feel guilty about it. Biting someone's ear off seems unnecessarily personal. Dazel, you say, which you're pretty sure is French for sorry about your ear. He's holding the side of his head, staring at you with a mixture of pain and outrage. Blood is leaking between his fingers. You're still holding his dagger, which puts you at a tactical advantage, but you feel terrible about the ear thing. It'll grow back, you say hopefully. He says something in French that you're quite certain is not a compliment. Around you the battle continues. Men are shouting, bleeding, falling over, getting back up, and generally engaging in the sort of organised chaos that medieval warfare is famous for. Someone is screaming about potatoes. Someone else is crying for his mother. A third person is singing what sounds like a drinking song while trying to strangle someone with his bare hands. You look back at the French soldier who's still holding his ear and glaring at you. He's young. Younger than you, probably. He's got kind eyes when they're not filled with pain and rage. He's got the soft hands of someone who's never done manual labour. He's probably someone's son, someone's brother, someone's beloved boy who went off to war and got his ear bitten off by a muddy English infantryman behind a pile of turnips. I really am sorry about the ear, you say. He stops glaring and looks at you curiously. Then he shrugs, as if to say, c'est la guerre, a jet. That's when the third French soldier appears behind him and runs a sword through his chest. The young soldier looks down at the blade protruding from his ribs with the expression of someone who's just realised he's been invited to a party he doesn't want to attend. Merde, he says, quite reasonably, and falls over. The third French soldier, an older man with scars and the look of someone who's done this many times before, pulls his sword free and turns to you with the expression of someone who's just finished his appetizer and is ready for the main course. Bonjour, he says, quite politely, then tries to split your head open with an overhand strike that would have been impressive if it had connected. You duck, roll, and come up with the young soldier's dagger still in your hand. The older soldier follows through with his swing, loses his balance slightly, and leaves himself open for just a moment. You take it. The dagger slides between his ribs like it was made for the job. He looks down at it with surprise, then at you with something that might be respect. Bien joué, he says, which you think means well played. Then he collapses on top of the young soldier, and you're left standing in a pile of French bodies, holding a bloody dagger, wondering how you've managed to kill 2 men in the space of 5 minutes. You look around. The battle is still raging, but it's moved away from you. Your little corner of the field has become a pocket of relative calm, populated mostly by the dead and the dying. Big John is still lying where he fell, but he stopped complaining about his arrows and started snoring. Geoffrey is still conscious, but has apparently decided to take up arrow collecting as a hobby. He's now sporting 7 of them. Thomas has given up on removing the arrow from his thigh and is using it as a sort of conversation starter with a wounded French soldier. Lovely weather for it, Thomas is saying. Bit muddy, but you can't have everything. The French soldier nods politely and offers Thomas a drink from his wineskin. They're sharing a companionable moment, two wounded men taking a break from trying to kill each other. You sit down heavily on a supply crate, still holding the dagger, still trying to process the fact that you've just killed two people. Your hands are shaking, your stomach is churning, your head is spinning. This is not how the stories described it. In the stories, killing was clean, heroic, noble. The hero defeats the villain with a clever riposte and a witty comment. There's no mention of biting ears, no description of the look in someone's eyes when they realize they're dying, no discussion of how it feels to push steel into flesh. You look at the dagger. It's a well-made weapon, better than anything you've ever owned. The handle is wrapped in leather, the blade is sharp and clean. Well, it was clean before you stuck it in someone's chest. You should probably get back to the fighting. The battle is still going on after all. Sergeant Blackwood is probably looking for you, wondering where his infantry has gone. The French are probably regrouping, preparing for another assault. But you sit there for a moment longer, holding the dagger, looking at the bodies around you, trying to make sense of a world where young men bite each other's ears off and then apologize for it. The sun is climbing higher. The morning is wearing on. And somewhere in the distance, you can hear the sound of horns. Deep, resonant, ominous. The horns sound again, deeper this time, with the kind of resonant authority that makes your bowels clench and your bladder contemplate a strategic retreat. You know that sound. Everyone knows that sound. It's the musical prelude to having very large horses with very sharp hooves introduce themselves to your vital organs. You scramble to your feet, still clutching the dagger you've liberated from the young French soldier. Around you, the wounded are performing miracles of sudden mobility. Geoffrey, who moments ago was conducting a detailed inventory of his arrow collection, is now attempting to crawl behind a fallen cart with impressive speed for someone who's been punctured 7 times. "Cavalry!" shouts someone unnecessarily, because the ground is already beginning to shake in that distinctive way that means several tons of horse and armour are headed in your direction with malicious intent. Big John opens his eyes. "What's that rumbling?" "Horses," you say helpfully. "Ah!" he says, then closes his eyes again. "Wake me when they've passed." You look across the field and see them, a line of French cavalry cresting the hill like a wave of metal and muscle. They're beautiful, in a terrible sort of way. The horses are magnificent beasts, all gleaming coats and flowing manes, their hooves striking sparks from the stones. The riders are equally impressive, encased in steel from head to toe, lances lowered, looking for all the world like something from a particularly violent fairy tale. They're also heading directly toward you. Sergeant Blackwood appears beside you, looking like he's been through a very enthusiastic threshing machine. He's got more arrows than skin showing, but he's still standing, still shouting, still apparently under the impression that this is all going according to some sort of plan. "Form square," he bellows, apparently unaware that a square typically requires more than 6 men and a cart full of turnips. "What square?" you ask reasonably. "The square we're about to form," he replies, which is the sort of circular logic that military minds excel at. You look around at your available forces. There's you, with your liberated dagger and your perforated shield. There's Geoffrey, still crawling toward shelter with impressive determination. There's Thomas, who's apparently decided that his arrow-punctured leg makes him a cavalry expert and is offering tactical advice to anyone who'll listen. "Brace for impact," Thomas suggests. "Lock shields, stand firm. Don't let them break the line." "What line?" you ask. "The line we're about to form," says Sergeant Blackwood, apparently having learned his debating techniques from Thomas. The cavalry is getting closer. You can see individual horses now, individual riders, individual lances aimed at individual vital organs. The ground is shaking so hard that it's difficult to stand, and the sound is like thunder that's taken up residence in your chest. You grab a spear from a fallen soldier. It's better than a dagger for cavalry work, assuming you can figure out how to use it without stabbing yourself. And try to remember everything Sergeant Blackwood taught you about fighting mounted opponents. Unfortunately, his lesson on cavalry tactics had been brief. Stick the horse, not the rider. Horses are bigger targets. Profound military wisdom from a man who's currently trying to organize a square formation, with 3.5 functional soldiers. The cavalry is close enough now that you can see the expressions on their faces, focused, determined, completely lacking in the sort of existential doubt that's been your constant companion all morning. They know what they're doing. They've probably done this before. They've probably enjoyed it. You hate them more than you've ever hated anything. The lead horse is a monster, easily 17 hands high, with the sort of chest that suggests it could knock down a small building if it put its mind to it. Its rider is equally impressive, a knight in full plate armour with a lance that looks like it was designed specifically to turn English infantry into decorative lawn ornaments. The knight is looking directly at you. This seems personal. "Steady!" shouts Sergeant Blackwood, apparently unaware that steadiness is a luxury you can't afford when facing down a cavalry charge with a sharp stick and a prayer. The horses hit your line like a tidal wave made of muscle and steel. The first horse, that magnificent 17-hand monster, crashes into your formation with the sound of the world's largest cooking pot colliding with the world's most enthusiastic drummer. Sergeant Blackwood disappears beneath it, shouting something that might be tactical advice or might just be screaming. You manage to get your spear up just in time to catch the horse in the chest. The point slides between the armour plates, and the horse rears, screaming in pain and rage. This is both good and bad. Good because you've successfully stabbed the horse. Bad because you're now directly beneath a ton of angry, wounded cavalry mount. The horse comes down hard, hooves the size of dinner plates aimed at your head with mathematical precision. You roll to your left, behind the supply cart, and the hooves crash into the ground where your head was a moment before. The knight is still in the saddle, apparently untroubled by the fact that his horse is bleeding and you're still alive. He's got a sword now, a proper sword, not the rust held together by hope that you've been carrying, and he's leaning down to introduce it to your skull. You duck under the swing and stab upward with your dagger, aiming for the gap between his leg armour and his torso. The blade finds its mark, sliding into the soft flesh of his thigh. He makes a sound like a kettle with anger management issues and swings at you again. This time, you can't duck fast enough. The flat of his blade catches you across the shoulder, spinning you around and sending you sprawling in the mud. Your shoulder feels like it's been hit by a particularly enthusiastic blacksmith's hammer. You roll away from the horse's hooves, which are still trying to introduce themselves to your various body parts, and come up beside the supply cart. The knight is trying to control his wounded horse while also trying to kill you, which is creating a sort of tactical multitasking problem. The horse rears again, and this time you're ready. You grab a handful of turnips from the cart and hurl them at the knight's helmet. This is not a conventional military tactic, but it's surprisingly effective. The turnips explode against his visor, temporarily blinding him. While he's wiping turnip pulp from his eye slits, you scramble up onto the cart and leap onto his horse behind him. This is either brilliant or catastrophically stupid, and you won't know which until you're either victorious or dead. The knight realizes he's got a passenger and tries to reach around to stab you, but his armour makes him about as flexible as a particularly rigid tree. You wrap your arm around his throat and try to pull him from the saddle. This starts a sort of medieval wrestling match, with both of you grappling while sitting on a wounded, angry horse that's actively trying to kill everyone in the immediate vicinity. The knight is stronger, but you're more desperate, and desperation is a powerful motivator. You manage to get your dagger up to his throat, but he grabs your wrist and tries to break it. You respond by biting his arm, which is protected by mail, but still seems to annoy him considerably. The horse decides it's had enough of this nonsense and begins bucking like a furious mechanical bull. You and the knight are thrown around like rag dolls, still grappling, still trying to kill each other, while the horse does its best to throw you both off. You manage to get the dagger through a gap in his armour just below his armpit. He stiffens, then goes limp, and you realise you've just killed your third person of the day. The horse, apparently realising that its rider is no longer providing guidance, decides to take matters into its own hooves. It bucks one final time, launching both you and the dead knight into the air like a medieval catapult. You land hard in the mud, with the knight's body on top of you. He's heavy. Armour weighs a lot, it turns out, and you have to wriggle out from under him like a particularly violent game of Twister. When you finally stand up, you see that the cavalry charge has passed. The field is littered with the debris of impact. broken lances, wounded horses, and the scattered remains of what used to be your formation. The cavalry has wheeled around and is regrouping for another pass, because apparently once wasn't quite enough excitement for them. Sergeant Blackwood emerges from beneath a pile of debris, looking like he's been used as a battering ram by a very enthusiastic siege engine. He's missing his helmet, most of his hair, and what appears to be a significant portion of his dignity. But he's still breathing and still shouting. "Regroup," he bellows, apparently unaware that regrouping requires having a group to begin with. You look around at your available forces. Geoffrey is somehow still alive, though he's now collecting horseshoes in addition to arrows. Thomas has apparently decided that his wounded leg makes him immune to cavalry, and is sitting cross-legged in the mud, humming what sounds like a lullaby. Big John is still snoring. The French cavalry is forming up again, and they look even more impressive the second time around. Their horses are breathing hard but still eager. Their lances are still sharp, and their riders still have that professional look that suggests they're very good at their job and quite enjoy it. You grab a lance from a fallen rider. It's longer than your spear and has a nice sharp point that looks like it knows what it wants to do when it grows up. The weight is unfamiliar, but it's better than facing cavalry with a dagger. "Here they come again," shouts Thomas helpfully, as if the thundering of hooves wasn't indication enough. The second charge begins. This time, you're ready. Sort of. You brace the butt of the lance against the ground, angle the point toward the approaching wall of horse and steel, and try to remember to keep breathing. The lead horse, a different monster this time, black where the first was brown, comes straight at you like a locomotive with attitude problems. Its rider has his lance lowered, aimed directly at your chest with the sort of precision that suggests he's done this before and enjoyed the results. At the last possible moment, you dive to your right, letting the horse thunder past while you try to get your lance into its flank. The point scrapes along the horse's side, drawing blood but not stopping it. The rider wheels around for another pass, but now you're behind a fallen cart and have something resembling cover. He comes at you again, trying to reach you with his lance over the cart, but the angle is wrong, and he can't get a clean thrust. You scramble around to the other side of the cart, playing a deadly game of ringside the rosy with a man in full plate armour riding a horse that weighs more than a small house. This continues for several circuits, with him trying to lance you and you trying not to be lanced. Finally, he gets frustrated and decides to jump the cart entirely. The horse clears it beautifully, a magnificent leap that would be inspiring if it weren't trying to kill you. You wait until the horse is in mid-air, then thrust upward with your lance. The point catches the horse in the belly. The horse comes down hard, stumbles, and throws its rider directly into the cart with a sound like a church bell falling down a well. The night lies still. The horse thrashes for a moment, then goes quiet. You stand there, breathing hard, holding a bloody lance, wondering how you've managed to survive 2 cavalry charges in the space of 10 minutes. Around you the battle continues to rage. The French cavalry is making another pass at what's left of the English line, which isn't much. Men are running, screaming, bleeding, and generally engaging in the sort of organised panic that military historians will later describe as tactical repositioning. You look across the field and see more cavalry forming up. Fresh horses, fresh riders, fresh lances, all eager to try their luck against whatever's left of the English army. Behind them, more infantry is advancing, and beyond that you can see the glint of armour that suggests even more unpleasant surprises are on their way. This is not going well. This is, in fact, going spectacularly badly. The English force is scattered, broken, and rapidly becoming extinct. Any sensible person would take this opportunity to run away, find a nice quiet place to hide, and wait for the whole unpleasant business to blow over. Unfortunately, you appear to have left your scent somewhere back in the arrow storm. You adjust your grip on the lance, check your dagger, and try to remember if you've written a will recently. The answer is no, but you're not sure it matters, since you don't actually own anything worth inheriting. The third cavalry charge begins. You're beginning to develop a very personal relationship with the French cavalry. They keep coming at you, you keep trying not to die, and somehow this dance of mutual annihilation continues, despite all logic and most of the laws of probability. The field around you looks like the aftermath of a particularly violent wedding reception. Bodies are scattered everywhere, some moving, some not, some apparently still arguing about military tactics despite being catastrophically punctured. Broken weapons litter the ground like deadly confetti, and the mud has taken on the sort of rich dark colour that suggests it's been heavily fertilised with things you'd rather not think about. Your lance is gone, snapped in half during the last cavalry encounter when you tried to use it to vault over a charging horse. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Your dagger is still with you, loyal and sharp, though you're starting to run out of Frenchmen to stick it into. Your shield has achieved a sort of abstract art status, with holes arranged in patterns that would be decorative if they weren't the result of people trying to kill you. The French cavalry has finally moved on to torment other sections of the English line, apparently having decided that your particular corner of the battlefield has been sufficiently processed. This gives you a moment to catch your breath and assess your situation, which is roughly what you'd expect from someone who's spent the morning being used as target practice by the entire French army. That's when you notice the smoke. It's rising from the far side of the field, black and oily, with the distinctive smell that suggests someone has set fire to something that didn't particularly want to be burned. This is concerning, because fire on a battlefield tends to spread, and you're currently standing in a field full of very flammable things, like wooden carts, cloth banners, and English infantry. You squint through the haze and see the source of the smoke. Someone, you're not sure if it's intentional or just spectacularly incompetent, has managed to set fire to a supply wagon. The wagon is loaded with what appears to be oil, pitch, and other substances that burn enthusiastically when given the opportunity. The fire is spreading. A flaming cart rolls past you, apparently having decided to take up a career in mobile arson. It's followed by a man who's also on fire, running in circles and singing what sounds like a hymn. He seems remarkably cheerful for someone who's currently combusting. "Lovely morning for it," he calls out as he runs past, trailing smoke and sparks. Nothing like a good fire to warm the bones. You stare after him. Either he's achieved some sort of transcendent state of battlefield madness, or being on fire has given him a unique perspective on the whole situation. Another cart explodes. Apparently someone thought it would be a good idea to store barrels of oil next to open flames. The explosion sends burning debris flying in all directions, including a wheel that passes so close to your head that it singes your eyebrows. The battlefield is beginning to look like a vision of hell designed by someone with a very active imagination and access to unlimited supplies of combustible materials. Flames leap from cart to cart, creating a chain reaction of destruction that's both beautiful and terrifying. A burning ox charges past you, apparently having decided that if everything else is on fire, it might as well join in. It's followed by its driver, who's trying to put out the flames with a wet cloth and a great deal of optimism. "Come back here," the driver shouts at the ox. "You're not supposed to be on fire." The ox appears to disagree with this assessment and continues its flaming rampage across the battlefield. You duck behind a pile of dead horses as another cart explodes, sending a shower of burning pitch in all directions. The pitch lands on everything: the ground, the carts, the bodies. The surviving soldiers who immediately begin their own enthusiastic combustion routines. A man near you catches fire and immediately begins a detailed critique of the experience. "Bit warm," he says, patting at the flames. "Could use some water. Perhaps a nice cool stream. Or a lake. A lake would be lovely." He wanders off, still burning, still commenting on the temperature. The smoke is getting thicker now, making it difficult to see more than a few yards in any direction. This is both good and bad. Good because it provides cover from French archers. Bad because you can't see the French archers to avoid them. You stumble through the smoke, trying to find a way out of the growing conflagration. The heat is becoming intense, and you're starting to understand why the Burning Man was so interested in finding water. A flaming banner falls from a broken cart and lands across your path. You jump over it, only to find yourself face to face with a French soldier who appears to be having exactly the same problem you are, namely, trying not to be cooked alive. "Pardonnez-moi," he says, politely, apparently feeling that good manners are important, even in the middle of a battlefield fire. "No problem," you reply, because it seems rude not to respond. You both stand there for a moment, two enemies in the middle of a battle, united by the common goal of not being burned to death. It's almost companionable. Then a burning cart crashes into the ground between you, and the moment of international friendship ends. You dive to your left, he dives to his right, and you both disappear into the smoke in different directions. The fire is spreading faster now. Everything that can burn is burning, and several things that shouldn't be able to burn are giving it a good try anyway. The air is full of smoke, sparks, and the occasional piece of flaming debris that's decided to take up a career in military projectiles. You climb over a pile of burning timber and find yourself in a pocket of relatively clear air. This allows you to see the full scope of the disaster, which is impressive even by medieval battlefield standards. The entire centre of the field is on fire. Carts are burning, banners are burning, weapons are burning, and a significant percentage of both armies is either burning or trying very hard not to burn. Men are running in all directions, some on fire, some trying to put out fires, some apparently having decided that if everything else is burning, they might as well set fire to additional things just to be thorough. A barrel of something explosive goes off near the French lines, sending a pillar of flame 50 feet into the air. The explosion is followed by a rain of burning debris that sets fire to everything it touches, including several French soldiers who immediately begin their own personal interpretations of what it means to be a human torch. You watch a man try to put out his burning hair by dunking his head in a barrel of what he apparently thinks is water, but which turns out to be oil. The results are predictably spectacular. Another man is trying to stamp out the flames on his tunic by rolling in the mud, which would be effective if the mud wasn't also on fire. Everything is on fire. The very ground seems to be burning, as if the earth itself has decided to join the general conflagration. A horse gallops past you, its mane and tail ablaze, looking like some sort of mythical creature from a particularly violent fairy tale. It's followed by its rider, who's also on fire, but still trying to control his mount with professional dedication. "Steady!" the rider calls to his burning horse. "Hold the line!" What line? Everything is on fire. The line is on fire. The concept of military formations has been replaced by the more pressing concept of not being cooked alive. You stumble through the smoke and flames, trying to find a way out of the inferno. Your eyes are streaming, your lungs are burning, and you're fairly certain that your eyebrows have been permanently relocated to somewhere else entirely. A man appears out of the smoke in front of you, swinging a sword at random shadows. He's not on fire, which makes him unusual, but he appears to have been overcome by smoke and is attacking anything that moves. "Die, French scum!" he shouts, swinging at a burning cart. "I'm English," you call out. "Die, English scum!" he shouts, swinging at you. You duck under his swing and keep moving. Behind you, you can hear him continuing his fight against the cart, which appears to be winning. The smoke clears for a moment, and you can see the far edge of the battlefield. It's not on fire, which makes it immediately attractive as a destination. You stumble toward it, climbing over burning debris, dodging falling timber, and trying to ignore the fact that your hair is starting to smoulder. That's when you see them. Fresh French troops approaching from the east, apparently having decided that a battlefield fire is the perfect opportunity to launch a new assault. They're marching in good order, shields up, weapons ready, looking for all the world like they know exactly what they're doing. You hate them with a passion that burns almost as hot as the literal fire surrounding you. The fresh troops are advancing through the smoke like professional soldiers who've done this before and enjoyed it. They're using the fire as cover, staying to the edges of the conflagration, picking off scattered English soldiers who are too busy not burning to death to put up much of a fight. This is not good. This is, in fact, spectacularly not good. You're trapped in the middle of a burning battlefield, with fresh enemy troops advancing, no clear escape route, and a growing suspicion that things are about to get significantly worse. You grab a sword from a fallen soldier, it's only slightly on fire, and try to think of a plan. The problem is that all your plans seem to centre around not dying, and that's becoming increasingly difficult to achieve. A burning beam crashes down in front of you, cutting off your escape route. Behind you, the French troops are getting closer. To your left, everything is on fire. To your right, everything is also on fire. You're running out of directions that don't involve being burned, stabbed, or both. You're beyond exhaustion now. Your legs feel like they're made of wet rope and regret. Your arms shake every time you lift your sword, which is concerning, since lifting your sword is currently the difference between being alive and being very decoratively dead. Your feet have progressed beyond pain into some sort of transcendent state where they've simply given up complaining and resigned themselves to whatever fresh hell you're about to drag them through. The fire has passed, mostly, leaving behind a battlefield that looks like the world's most violent pottery kiln has exploded. Everything is charred, smoking, or actively smouldering. The air tastes like ash and burnt dreams, with just a hint of that distinctive metallic flavour that comes from breathing in small particles of other people's blood. The fresh French troops have arrived, and they're annoyingly enthusiastic about their job. They advance through the smoke with the sort of professional competence that suggests they've done this before, enjoyed it, and are looking forward to doing it again. They step over the burning debris, around the scattered bodies, and through the lingering smoke with the casual ease of men who consider battlefield carnage to be a minor inconvenience. You duck behind a pile of what used to be a supply cart and try to assess your situation. You're armed with a sword that's only slightly melted, a dagger that's served you well through multiple encounters, and a shield that's achieved the sort of abstract artistic status that comes from being used as target practice by the entire French army. Your armour, and you use that term very loosely, now resembles something that a particularly violent tailor might create after being struck by lightning while drunk. Your helmet disappeared during the fire, probably having decided that discretion was the better part of valour. Your padded jacket is more whole than padding, more char than cloth. But you're alive. Somehow, inexplicably, against all logic and most of the laws of probability, you're still breathing. A French soldier appears around the edge of your improvised cover, looking remarkably well-fed and professional. He's got proper armour, a proper sword, and the proper expression of someone who's about to do something very improper to your vital organs. "Ah," he says, spotting you. "Anglaise." "Afraid so," you reply, because politeness costs nothing, even when you're about to try to kill each other. He nods approvingly, as if being English is a perfectly reasonable career choice, then tries to remove your head with a swing that whistles through the air like an angry wasp. You duck under the blade and thrust upward with your dagger, aiming for the gap between his chest plate and his arm guard. The point slides home, and he makes a sound like a deflating bagpipe with attitude problems. He staggers backward, looks down at the dagger protruding from his armpit with the expression of someone who's just realised his day has taken an unexpected turn, then sits down heavily. "Merde," he says, quite reasonably. "Sorry," you say, because you were raised to be polite. He waves dismissively, as if to say it's all part of the job, then falls over sideways. You pull your dagger free and immediately feel terrible about it. He seemed like a nice fellow. Probably had a family, a dog, a favourite tavern where everyone knew his name. Now he's just another casualty in a war that nobody really understands, fought for reasons that nobody can quite remember. Another French soldier appears, apparently having noticed that his colleague has decided to take a nap. This one is younger, nervous, with the sort of wide-eyed expression that suggests this is his first real battle, and he's rapidly reconsidering his career choices. "Jean," he calls to the dead soldier. "Jean, are you all right?" John doesn't answer, being dead, which the young soldier apparently finds concerning. "Jean's had a bit of an accident," you explain helpfully. The young soldier looks at you, looks at Jean, looks at the dagger in your hand, and puts together a sequence of events that clearly troubles him. "You killed Jean," he says, as if this is a novel concept. "I'm afraid so," you admit. But he was just talking about his wife, his new baby. He was going to show me a drawing. This makes you feel even worse. Jean had a baby, a wife who's waiting for him to come home, a drawing in his pocket that you'll never see. "I'm really very sorry," you say, and you mean it. The young soldier stares at you for a moment, then raises his sword with hands that shake like leaves in a strong wind. I have to avenge Jean," he says, though he doesn't sound entirely convinced. "Do you, though?" you ask. "I mean, Jean's dead either way. Avenging him won't bring him back. It'll just make 2 dead people instead of 1. The young soldier considers this. But it's what heroes do. In the stories, "Have you noticed," you say, gently, "that we're not actually in a story? This is real. John is really dead. If you try to avenge him, you'll probably be really dead too. Then your family will have to be told that you died, avenging someone who died for reasons nobody can quite remember. The young soldier lowers his sword slightly. My mother doesn't even know I'm here. I told her I was joining the church. The church is probably safer, you agree. Much safer, he says. Churches don't generally have people like you in them, stabbing people with daggers. I don't usually stab people with daggers, you protest. This is all very new to me. Yesterday I was a farmer. I grew turnips. Turnips are peaceful. They don't try to kill you. The young soldier brightens. I was a baker. I made bread. Bread is also peaceful. You both stand there for a moment, a farmer and a baker in the middle of a battlefield, surrounded by the debris of war, discussing the relative peacefulness of agricultural products. This is madness, the young soldier says. Complete madness, you agree. We should both go home. We absolutely should. But we can't, can we? Probably not. He sighs deeply and raises his sword again. I suppose we have to try to kill each other now. I suppose we do. For Jean. You circle each other warily, two reluctant combatants who've bonded over their mutual recognition of the absurdity of their situation. He swings at you half-heartedly, you parry without enthusiasm, and you both continue your conversation while trying to perform the socially expected dance of mutual annihilation. What's your name? He asks, attempting a thrust that you avoid by stepping sideways. I don't think we should know each other's names, you reply, countering with a swing that deliberately goes wide. It makes it more personal. Good point, he agrees, blocking a strike you didn't actually intend to connect. What should we talk about instead? Weather? Lovely day for it, he says, attempting an overhead strike that you dodge easily. Bit smoky, but you can't have everything. Could be worse, you agree, making a half-hearted stab at his shoulder that he deflects without effort. Could be raining. Rain would put out the fires, though. True, rain would be good right now. You continue your elaborate choreography of reluctant violence, each of you trying to look like you're fighting while actually ensuring that neither of you gets hurt. It's like a deadly dance performed by people who'd rather be anywhere else. Unfortunately, your philosophical discussion is interrupted by the arrival of another French soldier. An older man, with scars, and the sort of professional demeanour that suggests he takes his job seriously and doesn't have time for impromptu discussions about the weather. What's this? He demands, looking at you and the young soldier with the expression of someone who's just walked in on a tea party in the middle of a battlefield. We're fighting, the young soldier explains. No, you're not, the older soldier says. You're having a conversation with the enemy while holding weapons. This is not fighting. This is socializing. We were getting to the fighting part, you protest. Eventually, the young soldier adds. The older soldier looks at both of you with the sort of weary expression that comes from years of dealing with incompetent subordinates. Mark, he says to the young soldier, you are supposed to be killing the English, not making friends with them. His name is Mark, you say? I thought we agreed not to share names. Sorry, Mark says. It slipped out. The older soldier draws his sword, a proper sword, well-maintained and obviously experienced in the art of introducing people to their ancestors. Allow me to demonstrate proper combat technique, he says, then comes at you with the sort of professional enthusiasm that suggests he's very good at his job and quite enjoys it. You barely get your sword up in time to block his first strike, which rings against your blade with enough force to make your teeth rattle. His second strike comes immediately after, aimed at your head with surgical precision. You duck, roll, and come up behind Mark, who's apparently decided that this is an excellent time to stand very still and watch the proceedings with academic interest. Mark, you shout. Help! Help who? Mark asks reasonably. Your enemies. I'm not sure which side I'm supposed to support in this situation. The older soldier comes at you again, pressing his attack with methodical efficiency. He's clearly done this before, many times, and he's very good at it. Each strike is perfectly placed, perfectly timed, designed to end the fight as quickly and efficiently as possible. You're rapidly running out of ways to not die. You parry desperately, give ground, parry again. Your sword is heavier than it was this morning. Your arms are slower. Your reflexes dulled by exhaustion and the accumulated stress of spending an entire day being used as target practice by the French army. The older soldier sees your weakness and presses his advantage. His blade slides past your guard and opens a line across your ribs. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to hurt and to let you know that he could have killed you if he'd wanted to. "First blood to me," he says calmly, as if this is some sort of sporting event. You stagger backward, clutching your side, feeling the warm wetness spreading across your ribs. The wound burns like liquid fire, and you can feel your strength ebbing with each heartbeat. The older soldier advances for the killing stroke, his blade rising with professional precision. That's when Mark decides to join the fight. His sword takes the older soldier in the back, sliding between the plates of his armour with a sound like tearing silk. The older soldier stops mid-swing, looks down at the blade protruding from his chest with surprise, then turns to look at Mark with something that might be disappointment. "Mark," he says sadly. "That was very unprofessional." "Sorry, Sergeant," Mark says. "But he grows turnips. Turnips are peaceful." "Turnips," the sergeant says, considering this. "Well, I suppose that's reasonable." He sits down heavily, still looking at Mark with paternal disappointment. "You'll never make a proper soldier if you keep making friends with the enemy," he says. "I don't think I want to be a proper soldier," Mark admits. "Probably wise," the sergeant agrees, then falls over. You and Mark stand there, breathing hard, looking at the two bodies and trying to process what just happened. "You saved my life," you say. "You grow turnips," Mark replies, as if this explains everything. "Want to go home?" you ask. "Very much," Mark says. "But I don't think they'll let us." He's right, of course. Around you, the battle continues to rage. Fresh troops are still arriving, still advancing, still very much interested in the whole business of organised violence. Going home would require walking past several hundred armed men who've been trained to kill people like you, and they're unlikely to be sympathetic to your newfound friendship or your mutual appreciation for peaceful vegetables. You're trapped. Exhausted, wounded, running on adrenaline and stubborn refusal to die, but trapped nonetheless. The sun is beginning to set, painting the battlefield in shades of red and gold that would be beautiful if they weren't illuminating quite so much death and destruction. The fighting is becoming more desperate now, more chaotic, as men on both sides push themselves beyond the limits of endurance in pursuit of victory that seems increasingly meaningless. You lean against a pile of rubble, clutching your wounded side, and try to think of a plan. Any plan. A plan that involves not dying would be preferable, but at this point, you'll settle for a plan that involves dying less spectacularly than some of the alternatives you've witnessed today. That's when you hear them. Horns again. Different this time. English horns. Reinforcements, perhaps. Or retreat. Or surrender. Or possibly just someone announcing that lunch is ready, though that seems optimistic given the circumstances. You look toward the sound and see banners approaching through the smoke. English banners, flying above a formation of men who look almost as exhausted as you feel. Help is coming. Maybe. Possibly. If they don't get killed before they reach you. You adjust your grip on your sword, check your dagger, and try to summon the energy for whatever comes next. The day is far from over. The English reinforcements turn out to be about 30 men, who look like they've already fought 3 battles today and are deeply unhappy about being asked to fight a 4th. They're led by a knight whose armour has seen better decades, and whose horse appears to be held together by willpower and spite. "Right then," the knight calls out cheerfully, apparently unaware that cheerfulness is a luxury that went out of fashion around the time the arrows started falling. "Who's ready for another go?" Nobody answers, because everyone is too tired to muster the energy for proper military enthusiasm. The 30 men arrange themselves into something that might charitably be called a formation if you squinted, and had been drinking heavily. You and Mark watch this from behind your pile of rubble, both of you apparently having reached the same conclusion about the futility of organised warfare. "BMI don't look very reinforced," Mark observes. "DMI look about as reinforced as we are," you agree. The knight spots you and rides over, his horse picking its way carefully between the bodies and debris, like a very large, very tired cat navigating a particularly cluttered room. "You there," he calls. "English, I presume?" "Mostly," you reply, gesturing at your various wounds. "Some of me may have gone missing during the day." "Excellent. And who's this?" He peers at Mark with the sort of professional interest that suggests he's trying to decide whether to recruit him or kill him. "That's Mark," you explain. "He's French, But he's peaceful. He makes bread. Bread, the knight says, brightening considerably. Marvellous. We could use some bread. This campaign has been sadly lacking in proper baked goods. Mark looks confused. You want me to make bread? Now? In the middle of a battle? Well, not immediately, the knight clarifies. But perhaps later, when all this unpleasantness is sorted out. Assuming we survive, of course. That's quite an assumption, you point out. Optimism is essential in warfare, the knight replies. That and proper footwear. Speaking of which, you both look like you could use some medical attention. He's not wrong. You're bleeding from at least 3 different wounds. Your ribs feel like they've been used as a xylophone by an enthusiastic giant, and your feet have progressed beyond pain into some sort of mystical state where they've achieved oneness with suffering. Mark isn't much better. He's got a collection of minor cuts, his armour is hanging in pieces, and he has the glazed expression of someone who's recently discovered that reality is considerably less pleasant than he'd been led to believe. Medical attention would be lovely, you say. Do you happen to have a physician with you? We have Gilbert, the knight says. He used to be a barber. Is that good? Well, he's very good at cutting hair, and he once removed a splinter from someone's thumb. That's reassuring. The knight looks around at the battlefield, taking in the scattered bodies, the smouldering debris, and the general atmosphere of organised catastrophe. Right then, he says. I suppose we should charge something. For form's sake, can't have reinforcements arriving and not charging. Bad for morale. You look around. The French forces that were advancing earlier have apparently decided that discretion is the better part of valour and have withdrawn to a safe distance. The immediate area is populated mostly by the dead, the dying, and the seriously reconsidering their life choices. What exactly would we charge, you ask? The knight considers this. Good point. Perhaps we should charge that hill over there. Hills are always good for charging. There are French soldiers on that hill. Even better, can't charge an empty hill. That would just be running, and running is bad for morale. You're beginning to suspect that the knight's understanding of military tactics was developed by someone who had only heard about warfare second-hand from someone who had read about it in a book written by someone who had never actually seen a battle. Sir, you say carefully, with respect, I'm not sure 30 exhausted men charging uphill against prepared positions is going to end well. Nonsense, the knight replies. We have right on our side. Do we? Of course, we're English. I'm not sure that's how right works. The knight looks puzzled. Isn't it? I was told that being English automatically made us right about things. Makes sense if there are fewer folk over here. Before the knight can respond to this theological challenge, the French make the decision for everyone by launching another assault down the hill. Not a full charge. They've apparently learned something from watching the previous disasters, but a careful, professional advance by men who know what they're doing and aren't particularly concerned about the 30 exhausted Englishmen standing in their way. Ah, says the knight. Well, that settles that then. The battle begins again, but this time it's different. Slower, more desperate. Both sides are running on fumes now, pushing themselves beyond exhaustion through sheer bloody-minded determination not to be the first to give up. You find yourself fighting beside Mark, which creates an interesting tactical situation since you're technically enemies but have apparently decided to ignore this detail in favour of mutual survival. You cover his left side, he covers your right, and together you try to avoid being killed by the steady stream of French soldiers who seem genuinely surprised to find a Frenchman fighting alongside an Englishman. This is confusing, says one French soldier, apparently taking a break from trying to kill you to discuss the philosophical implications of the situation. Very confusing, agrees another, who's in the middle of a sword fight with Mark but seems to be conducting it more as an academic exercise than a serious attempt at homicide. Perhaps we should just agree to disagree, suggests the first soldier. This seems like a reasonable approach to everyone involved, so you all step back and take a break from the fighting to discuss the situation like rational adults. The thing is, explains the first French soldier, we've been told to kill all the English. And we've been told to kill all the French, you reply. But Mark's French, and he seems quite nice. Mark is nice, agrees the second French soldier. He makes excellent bread. Do you know Mark? You ask. We're from the same village. His bakery is just down the street from my blacksmith shop. Mark brightens. Pierre, I didn't recognize you with all the armor and blood. How's your wife? Very well, thank you. She asked me to tell you that she loved those honey cakes you made for the harvest festival. Tell her I'll make more when this is all over. If we're all still alive. Optimism, Pierre, optimism. You stand there in the middle of a battlefield, watching a French baker and a French blacksmith catch up on village gossip, while technically trying to kill each other. This is either the most civilized battle in history, or the most warlike social gathering, and you're not entirely sure which. The philosophical discussion is interrupted by the arrival of more soldiers, both English and French, who seem considerably less interested in village news and more focused on the traditional military activities of stabbing and being stabbed. The fighting resumes, but it's different now. Exhausted, mechanical. Men go through the motions of warfare without the passion that drove them this morning. Swords clash with the tired rhythm of workers at the end of a very long day, and the battle cries have been reduced to breathless grunts and the occasional muttered complaint about sore feet. You swing your sword at a French soldier who parries with the enthusiasm of someone who's really rather tired of this whole business. He counterattacks half-heartedly, you block without conviction, and you both pause to catch your breath. How much longer do you think this will go on? He asks in heavily accented English. Until someone wins, I suppose, you reply. But who's winning? You look around at the battlefield. Bodies everywhere, both English and French. Smoke still rising from the burned carts. Men scattered across the field, like broken toys after a particularly violent child's tantrum. I honestly can't tell, you admit. Neither can I, he says. This is poorly organized. Very poorly organized. He attempts another swing, you dodge without urgency, and the conversation continues. Do you know what we're fighting about? He asks. Not really. Something about kings, I think, and possibly some land disputes. Ah, I was told it was about honour. Honour's important, you agree, then try to stab him in a companionable sort of way. He deflects the thrust and returns it with equally friendly violence. Very important, though I'm not entirely sure what honour means anymore. I think it means not running away. They'd very much like to run away. So would I. But we can't. No. Bad for honour. Terrible for honour. You continue your strange dance of polite violence, each of you making a token effort to kill the other while maintaining a perfectly civilized conversation about the philosophical underpinnings of medieval warfare. The sun is setting now, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold. It's quite beautiful, actually, which seems inappropriate given the circumstances. Beautiful sunsets should be reserved for romantic moments and peaceful contemplation, not for battlefields littered with the debris of human ambition. The fighting is winding down as darkness approaches. Men are simply too tired to continue with any real enthusiasm. Here and there, small groups of soldiers are calling informal truces, sitting down together to share what little food and water they have left. You finally manage to land a hit on your French conversationalist. Nothing serious, just a scratch on his arm that draws a small amount of blood. Ah, he says, looking at the wound. I suppose that means you win this particular engagement. I suppose it does. Sorry about that. No need to apologise. Very sporting of you to aim for somewhere non-vital. I try to be considerate. He sits down heavily on a pile of armour, apparently deciding that the wound gives him an excuse to take a break from the whole business of warfare. I think I'll rest here for a while, he says, perhaps until the battle is over. Good idea. Resting is important. Terized. Essential for proper health. You look around for Mark and find him sitting with Pierre the blacksmith, both of them sharing a piece of bread and discussing the finer points of grain selection. They've apparently decided that their personal friendship outweighs international conflict, which seems like a reasonable approach to the situation. The knight who brought the reinforcements is nowhere to be seen. His horse is standing nearby, looking bored and occasionally nibbling on the grass between bodies. It appears to have adapted to battlefield conditions with the pragmatic acceptance that comes from being a military horse in an age when military horses frequently find themselves in ridiculous situations. You sit down on a fallen log and take stock of your condition. You're bleeding from multiple wounds, none of them immediately fatal, but all of them annoying. Your armour is hanging in pieces, your weapons are chipped and dulled. Your feet have achieved a state of pain so transcendent that they've circled back around to numbness. But you're alive. Somehow, impossibly, you've survived an entire day of medieval warfare. You've been shot at by archers, charged by cavalry, burned by fire, and attacked by fresh troops. And yet you're still breathing. The battlefield is quieting now. The sounds of combat are fading, replaced by the softer noises of wounded men calling for help, dying men saying goodbye, and exhausted men simply lying down where they stand. A gentle breeze carries the smell of smoke and blood across the field, mixing with the scent of trampled grass and the earthy smell of fresh-turned soil. Somewhere in the distance, a bird is singing, a clear, sweet note that seems impossibly pure in this place of death and destruction. You close your eyes and listen to the bird. It's a lark, you think, welcoming the approaching night with a song that speaks of things beyond warfare, beyond the petty ambitions of kings and the territorial disputes of nations. It sings of fields where grain grows tall, of villages where bakers make bread and blacksmiths shoe horses, of a world where men don't spend their days trying to kill each other with sharp pieces of metal. The exhaustion hits you all at once, like a wave that's been building all day and finally crashes over you. Your eyelids feel heavy, your muscles relax. The adrenaline that's been keeping you moving drains away, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that seems to seep into your very soul. You lie back against the log, your sword still in your hand, but no longer feeling like a weapon. It's just a piece of metal now, no more threatening than a farming tool. Your dagger is still at your belt, but it feels like something you might use to cut bread rather than to cut men. The sky darkens. Stars begin to appear, tiny points of light that look down on the battlefield with the eternal indifference of celestial bodies that have witnessed countless human conflicts and will witness countless more. They've seen empires rise and fall, kings crowned and deposed, battles fought and forgotten. This battle, this day, this moment, it's all just another brief flicker in the endless night of history. You should probably get up, find out if your side won or lost, report to whoever's in charge, help with the wounded, do something constructive with the fact that you've survived when so many others haven't. But you don't move. You lie there against the log, looking up at the stars, listening to the lark's song, feeling the cool night air on your face. Your breathing slows, your heartbeat quiets. The pain from your wounds fades into a distant ache that seems to belong to someone else. Around you, the battlefield settles into the strange peace that comes after violence. Men are finding places to rest, to tend their wounds, to contemplate what they've done and what's been done to them. Some are talking quietly, sharing stories or fears or simple human companionship. Others lie silent, lost in their own thoughts or simply too exhausted for consciousness. Mark appears beside you, moving quietly through the gathering darkness. He sits down nearby, his own sword laid aside, his baker's hands folded in his lap. "Is it over?" he asks softly. "I think so," you reply. "For now." Who won? You consider this. Looking around at the scattered bodies, the destroyed equipment, the wounded men on both sides, it's hard to declare any victor. "I don't think anyone won," you say finally. "I think we all lost something today." Mark nods thoughtfully. "My village lost 2 boys besides me. Pierre's nephew, the miller's son. They didn't come back." "I'm sorry. Are you getting back to your turnips?" "If I can, if they'll have me." You pause, considering. "Are you going back to your bakery?" "It's still there. If I remember how to make bread for people instead of just this." He gestures vaguely at the battlefield, at the evidence of what human hands can do when they're turned to destruction instead of creation. You lie there together in comfortable silence, an English farmer and a French baker, 2 men who spent the day trying not to kill each other and ended up becoming something like friends. It's not the sort of story that will be told in the great halls or sung by the bards, but it's a true story nonetheless. The night deepens. The sounds of the battlefield fade to whispers and the occasional groan. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human concerns, marking time in scales that make wars and kingdoms seem like brief spasms of activity in an otherwise peaceful universe. Your eyes grow heavy. The exhaustion that you've been holding at bay all day finally claims you, pulling you down into the soft darkness of sleep. Your sword slips from nerveless fingers. Your breathing deepens. Your body relaxes into the earth beneath you. As consciousness fades, you have a moment of panic. What if you don't wake up? What if this sleep is the final sleep, the quiet slide from exhaustion into death? What if your story ends here, in this place of blood and mud, just another casualty in a war that nobody will remember in 100 years? But the panic passes quickly, replaced by a strange peace. If this is the end, it's not a bad way to go. You're not alone. Mark is beside you, Pierre nearby, even the French soldier you fought earlier within earshot, all of you finding rest after the storm. You're not in pain. The aches and wounds have faded into background noise, overwhelmed by exhaustion. You're not afraid. Fear has been replaced by a deep, bone-weary acceptance of whatever comes next. And you're not angry anymore. The rage that carried you through the day, the hatred that made it possible to kill other men, has burned itself out, like the fires that swept the battlefield. What's left is just tired compassion for everyone who was caught up in this madness, French and English alike. The lark sings one final note, then falls silent. The battlefield settles into the deep quiet that comes with the end of struggle. Your breathing slows, your heartbeat softens, and you drift into sleep with the gentle finality of a ship reaching harbour after a long and difficult voyage. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls the hour. Midnight, perhaps, or simply the end of things. The sound carries across the field like a benediction, a formal acknowledgement that this day is finally, mercifully over. Your last conscious thought is a simple one. You grew turnips. You were a farmer. You made things grow instead of destroying them, created food instead of taking life. Tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow, you'll go back to that. You'll plant seeds instead of wielding swords, tend crops instead of fighting wars, feed people instead of killing them. The thought makes you smile as sleep takes you, there in the mud and blood of a battlefield that no one will remember, surrounded by the breathing forms of men who found peace in exhaustion and friendship in the midst of enmity. The stars wheel overhead, the earth turns, and somewhere, in a field that will grow green again when spring comes, an English farmer and a French baker sleep the sleep of the living dead, dreaming of bread and turnips, and a world where such simple things matter more than the ambitions of kings. Thank you for listening, one last time. May your sleep be deep, your dreams quiet, and your mind at peace. Good night.